The wedding ring, a detail Jessica frequently fiddled with while lost in thought, had gone missing. Not misplaced, simply absent. One evening, as we were watching television, I observed her unadorned hand. She always took pride in the understated platinum ring with a diamond that sparkled just right. It wasn't on the table, counter, or nightstand where she usually placed it if removed for cleaning or bathing. "Where's your ring?" I asked, maintaining a casual tone. Her gaze remained fixed on her phone. I disliked that device intensely. "It's at the jeweler's," she replied hastily. Resizing was needed. Resizing. I furrowed my brow. After 7 years, she nonchalantly shrugged, only then meeting my eyes with a hint of annoyance. "Don't they, fingers?" I chose not to probe further, though her reason seemed illogical. If her hands appeared different, it wasn't due to weight fluctuations. She remained the same Jessica, possibly more toned and refined. Lately, she had been devoting more time to exercise, spending additional minutes before mirrors, experimenting with new styles. I had thought it was for her own satisfaction, perhaps to break the monotony of routine. However, the absence of her ring started a lingering doubt in my mind. 2 weeks later, I received my first substantial clue. Jessica informed me she would be out late with her new professional circle. Ordinarily, I am not envious. I have never minded if she socialized or went to events individually. But this time, I felt uneasy. I chose to probe her. "That sounds interesting. Which group is it?" I asked as nonchalantly as possible. Her response came abruptly. "Just some colleagues. You wouldn't know them." I hadn't expected names, but her brusqueness troubled me. Jessica was usually open about her life, almost excessively so. Yet, now her words seemed measured, her tone terse. On the following Saturday, I unexpectedly visited her professional gathering. With careful planning, scrutinizing her schedule, locating her latest preferred restaurants, I had a decent guess of their location. Upon entering the bar, she was immediately spotted not with a group, nor a colleague. Instead, Jessica was leaning against an unfamiliar man, her hand on his arm, her laughter conspicuously loud and familiar. Initially, I remained frozen in disbelief, convinced that it couldn't be true. However, as she caressed his cheek casually, my suspicions were confirmed. I chose not to make a scene immediately, but instead hid in the shadows, observing their interaction, their closeness, her lingering lips near his ear. It wasn't merely infidelity. She was comfortable. Upon witnessing the kiss, I departed, left without knowing how to process the situation. Instead, I spent hours driving aimlessly, reliving that moment repeatedly. My fingers clenched the steering wheel so tightly they turned pale. Upon reaching home, Jessica was already asleep in bed. Her phone lay on the counter, casting a dim light from its notifications. For the first time in our relationship, I picked it up. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the messages. There it was Mark's name. Foolish. Flirtatious texts with no room for ambiguity. Plans, inside jokes, things she hadn't shared with me in years. But the one that shattered me read, "Can't wait to see you again tonight. You're worth the risk." She knew I witnessed her departure from the party, believing I was merely upset. However, my plans were not for confrontation, but revenge. The following morning, I awoke before Jessica. I sat at the kitchen table with an untouched cup of coffee, focusing on nothing in particular. My mind swirled, contemplating every method to confront her, every word I wished to hurl at her. But no, that was too straightforward, too gratifying for her. She didn't deserve easy solutions. At 9:30, Jessica strolled in, her hair disheveled and wearing my sweatshirt casually with leggings, as if nothing was amiss. My jaw stiffened. I yearned to yell at her, pressure her for explanations, but held back, keeping calm. Not just yet. "Good morning," she said, her voice breezy and carefree. She reached for her favorite mug and began pouring herself coffee, humming an inconsequential tune. I couldn't resist. "So, how was your networking event last night?" Her hand paused momentarily. The pause was minuscule, almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. She quickly regained composure, turning to face me with a smile that seemed false and irritatingly fake. "It was good, lengthy, lots of small talk, as you well know." "Oh, yes," I replied nonchalantly, reclining in my seat, swirling my coffee indifferently. Interesting. I happened to be around last night and thought I'd drop by, but I couldn't find you. Her smile wavered. The waver was slight, but I saw it. Oh, it must have been later then. We departed early and ventured to a less crowded spot for conversation. Lies were now streaming out of her as if they were part of another language. It was repulsive. Correct? I gave a slow nod, maintaining eye contact. She turned away first, feigning a sip from her coffee cup. It was then that I spotted it. By the entrance's chair, her red dress from last night. It was creased, as if she hadn't bothered to hang it properly. And on the collar, there was a trace of something dark. Lipstick. No, Jessica never opted for anything other than neutral tones. It wasn't hers. I rose, walked past her, and picked up the dress. She visibly stiffened. "You're becoming careless, Jess," I said softly. Her gaze shifted to me, confusion flickering in her eyes before being replaced by a calculated composure. "What do you mean by that?" I displayed the dress, pointing at the stain. "This, not yours, isn't it?" For a brief moment, she appeared frightened, but then she chuckled. A sharp, hollow sound that made my blood run cold. "Are you truly implying I'm guilty due to a stain, which turns out to be wine? From our dinner?" Preposterous. She approached me, seizing the garment from my grasp. The arrogance in her tone was unbelievable. I had to grit my teeth to suppress my urge to fling her deceit back at her. "Very well," I responded, feigning acceptance. "Wine. Quite logical." Yet her response betrayed everything I needed to know. She was lying, and she was aware that I knew. Later in the day, I determined it was time to escalate matters. I took her laptop while she was bathing. Last night, her phone had been secured, but I knew she wasn't meticulous with all things. Her email was active. There it was, a divine revelation. An entire conversation thread with Mark. Exchanges filled with flirtation, details of their dates, future plans. He wasn't merely a passing fancy. He was an integral part. Jessica emerged from the bathroom as I closed the laptop. She was swathed in a towel, water droplets cascading onto the hardwood floor. She stiffened upon spotting me on the bed with her laptop nearby. No smile, no words, just a prolonged, intense gaze from me. Her gaze flickered to the laptop. She swallowed, questioning, "What?" in an attempt at innocence. I rose slowly, brushing against her, and murmured audibly enough for her to hear, "You'll find out soon." She called my name as I departed, but I did not pause. I had no intention of giving her the pleasure of hastily concealing her activities. The game was afoot, and she was yet unaware. Jessica spent the entire day hovering over me like a watchful hawk. Her usual easygoing attitude vanished, replaced by palpable tension. Each question she posed, "What's going on? Why are you so silent today?" oozed desperation. She sensed something was amiss, but she did not know what I knew. This ignorance kept her at a disadvantage. Around 8 p.m., she declared she was heading to the grocery store. I briefly nodded to her, feigning attention to a football match I wasn't really watching. Once her car departed from the driveway, I swiftly moved into action. Her laptop wasn't sufficient. I required something tangible and irrefutable to invalidate all possible excuses she might present. I navigated to her neatly arranged dresser and began searching through her belongings. Jessica was always fastidious about her space. However, I now recognized it as a concealing ground for her deceit. It didn't take long to locate what I sought. Hidden in an antique shoebox at the back of the drawer, beneath a heap of scarves she hadn't worn in years, was her second phone. My pulse quickened as I held it, questioning how I had overlooked this all along. I activated it. No password. A naive move, Jessica. Messages, photos, locations, it was all there. Mark's name topped her chat list, their exchanges resembling a twisted love narrative. They used endearing nicknames for one another. They discussed upcoming vacations, destinations they aspired to visit together, locations Jessica had never previously mentioned to me, and images, cheerful selfies of the two of them at the bar in the gym or in his car. One stood out prominently. Jessica wearing that provocative red dress, with Mark's arm protectively around her waist. I felt an urge to hurl the phone, shatter something, shout. Instead, I captured screenshots of everything and forwarded them to myself. Proof. This wasn't merely about challenging her anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, about ensuring she couldn't escape the predicament she created. Upon returning home roughly 30 minutes later, Jessica arrived with grocery bags as if nothing untoward had occurred. She even hummed while walking in, regaining her false self-assurance. I maintained a composed demeanor when she entered the kitchen, placing a carton of eggs on the counter. "How was the store?" I inquired, keeping my voice neutral. She looked at me, possibly assessing my state of mind. "All right, but they were out of my preferred almond milk." I nodded, drumming my fingers on the countertop. "Earlier, you left your laptop open." This caused her to halt mid-action, clutching a can of soup and a loaf of bread. She soon regained her composure, placing the items down and chuckling nervously. "Say, were you working on something?" I remained silent, merely displaying her second phone from my fingers, letting it swing freely. The color drained from her face upon seeing this. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice edgy, no longer feigning ignorance. "Well, where would you think?" I retorted, leaning against the counter. "Perhaps a more appropriate query. How long were you planning to conceal this? Or did you believe I was too simple-minded to perceive it?" Her mouth gaped open and shut like a fish struggling for breath. It's not what you think." "Oh, it most certainly is." My voice swelled, releasing the rage I had been suppressing all day. I slammed the phone onto the countertop. "You've been secretively associating with Mark, deceiving me openly, and your attempts at concealment were insufficient. What on earth possesses you?" Jessica glanced towards the phone, then back at me. Her usual swift deflections of truth were absent. Instead, she opted for defiance, perhaps hoping to shift blame. She suggested that if you'd given me more attention, I wouldn't have needed Mark. Her words stung like a slap, yet I remained unfazed. I advanced towards her, my tone icy. "Don't dare try to assign fault here. This is your decision, Jessica. You shattered this, not mine." For a brief moment, the room was still save for the sound of her shallow breaths. Then she seized the phone and fled from the kitchen, mumbling about needing solitude. I allowed her departure, letting her believe she retained some power. Because while she hid in the bedroom, communicating with Mark to disguise her actions, I was devising my next strategy. When Jessica stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door forcefully, much like a rebellious adolescent, I remained in place. Her knuckles were clenched so tightly that they seemed to ache, but I couldn't afford to pause now. She believed she could flee, regroup, and manipulate the story as she often did. Not this time. The distant sound of muffled footsteps from upstairs resonated, while I fixated on the second phone still gripped in my hand. She may have thought herself sly by snatching it back, but I had managed to reclaim it when her attention was elsewhere. Her conversations with Mark were my next objective, but I wasn't just interested in their text history. I wanted to learn the true identity of this man. If he thought he could casually enter my life and seize what I had worked hard to construct, he had another idea coming. I navigated through the messages, scrolling back to the start of their conversation thread. It began with a simple exchange about a common project. Mark's full name was visible atop one of the emails that Jessica had transferred to her phone. That was all I required. I swiftly picked up my laptop and entered his name across various platforms, including Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Voila, Mark embodied a typical persona. His Instagram was an orchestrated collection of gym selfies, costly steak feasts, and profound sayings about grinding and optimizing life. He even had a highlights reel named My People, where Jessica's visage appeared in multiple clips. The videos enraged me. In one, she laughed as Mark captured her face too closely with the camera. In another, she sat on his lap at a party, her head flung back carefree. The captions read things like, "She's trouble, but I appreciate a challenge," and "Some risks are worth taking." What startled me most wasn't merely the casual disregard, it was how effortless and open their relationship was. Mark didn't fear discovery because Jessica seemingly hadn't taken the time to establish boundaries. She was flaunting it. I uncovered details about Mark on LinkedIn, his job, office location, and gym, all meticulously displayed in his professional profile. His overbearing arrogance was evident. He likely believed himself invincible. As I pieced together Mark's world, a plan emerged in my mind. Jessica had deceived me, but Mark had entangled himself in this situation. That made him fair game. I wouldn't challenge him directly. Doing so would grant them both the pleasure of playing the victim. Instead, I aimed to dismantle their illusory world piece by piece. By the time Jessica emerged from the bedroom, feigning a glass of water, I had already sent myself the evidence. Photos, captions, and messages exchanged between them were screenshotted. She eyed me suspiciously as I sat at the dining table, typing vigorously. "Are you still moping?" she asked, her voice filled with disdain. I didn't bother to look up. "No, I'm merely getting started." That silenced her. She momentarily paused, then retraced her steps to the bedroom. Excellent. Let her brood. By midnight, I had compiled a detailed file on Mark that would leave any private investigator envious. I knew his occupation, pastimes, routines, and I possessed all the necessary evidence to disrupt his life just as he had mine. The initial move was straightforward. Mark's workplace provided an open email directory for clients and contacts. I crafted a tactfully written message to his manager, including screenshots of his Instagram posts and emails with Jessica. I ensured it was courteous, professional, and oozing with implied deniability. The subject line read, "Regarding employee behavior, dear manager's name. I trust this email finds you well. Recently, I stumbled upon some Instagram posts pertaining to one of your employees, Mark last name. This has sparked apprehensions about his professional behavior, as the content suggests inappropriate workplace relationships. I felt it prudent to inform you of this matter, as such conduct may be questionable. Will you inform me if more details are needed? Kind regards from an unnamed source." By the time Mark witnessed the aftermath, he would recognize its origin. With each click of the send button, a surge of contentment filled me. Jessica believed she could dance with Mark, oblivious to my observation. Mark assumed he could intrude upon my life without repercussions. Both were mistaken. The initial piece had fallen, and I eagerly anticipated observing their world's downfall. The following morning, Jessica acted as if nothing untoward had transpired. She sauntered into the kitchen donning her favorite silk robe, humming merrily as though she hadn't been discovered in flagrante delicto. "Would you like pancakes?" she queried, extracting a mixing bowl, seemingly unperturbed by the situation. I stood there, taken aback by her audacity. She was attempting to maintain the facade of domestic bliss, ignoring the fissure in our marriage that had now expanded into a chasm. I almost chuckled. Almost. I declined bluntly, crossing my arms, and lost my appetite. When you leaned into Mark's lap, your stirring hand froze. The clatter of the whisk against the bowl ceased suddenly, and you turned to confront me, your face tight with anger. "Are you doing this again?" you retorted sharply. "You're misinterpreting things that aren't there. I told you he's just a friend." "How could you say something like that?" The audacity of it all. Are you referring to the kind of friend who texts you about feeling like fire in his arms, or the one who has you sitting on his lap while wearing the dress bought for our anniversary dinner? I spoke each word with venom. Your face paled, but then you quickly regained your composure, defensive walls rising swiftly. "You invaded my privacy by going through my phone," you countered, voice indignant. "That's a serious breach of trust, you realize? I can hardly believe what I'm hearing. You're trying to portray yourself as the victim. Your audacity is almost laughable." "Infringement of trust," I retorted, rising. "You're sleeping with another man, and I'm the one betraying trust. Have you lost your senses? You don't seem to comprehend what you're saying." She flashed a look of irritation beneath her composed exterior. "I don't know what you suppose you've witnessed, but you're greatly exaggerating the situation. Mark and I haven't. Well, that is not relevant." I interrupted her with a derisive chuckle. "Don't dare complete that statement. I've seen the messages, the images. You can fool yourself as much as you like, but don't expect me to believe your falsehoods." For a while she was silent. Her lips parted as if to argue, but she remained quiet. Eventually, she set the bowl aside and folded her arms. "Very well," she said frostily. "What do you wish me to admit? That I made an error? That I felt isolated? You're hardly blameless either. With your work and everything, you barely acknowledge my existence anymore." And there it was, the accusation, the skewed reasoning. Somehow her infidelity became my fault. "Abstain," I uttered, my tone soft but decisive. "Abstain from attempting to cast this blame on me. You had choices, Jess. You could have communicated with me. You could have terminated our marriage if you were so discontented. But rather, you opted for deception, secretiveness, and embarrassment." Her jaw stiffened, her defense weakening slightly. "You fail to comprehend," she replied, her tone softer now. "It wasn't meant to transpire this way." I arched an eyebrow. "Indeed, elucidate me. How was it intended to occur? Were you anticipating my indifference as you cohabited with Mark? Or were you plotting to desert me when it suited your needs?" Her silence conveyed the message I required. Before she could retort, her phone buzzed on the counter. We both looked at it concurrently, and I didn't overlook the way her face tightened upon seeing Mark's name appear. "Proceed," I said, gesturing to the phone. "Answer it, or preferably activate the speaker. It might be more transparent that way." She hesitated, her hand poised above the phone screen. Then she chose to decline the call, slipping the device into her pocket. I chuckled cynically. "I expected as much," Jessica started to counter, but was cut off. I casually mentioned, picking up my coffee mug and heading towards the exit. "By the way, you might want to inform your boyfriend about an intriguing morning at work he's in store for." I sent some items his direction. Her eyes grew wide with concern. "What transpired?" I responded with a chilling smile, simply aiding Mark in establishing accountability. "Just thought it was necessary since he takes his profession so seriously." She looked shocked and enraged, but I didn't linger to witness her reaction. I left, leaving her there, gripping the phone tightly. This matter was far from resolved. The disintegration commenced, and I wouldn't halt until I reduced their imaginary realm to ashes. The consequences unfolded quicker than anticipated. By noon, Mark's Instagram became void. His self-satisfied selfies, encouraging slogans, and triumphant videos vanished, replaced by a barren profile. It was like observing a monument collapsing in real life. Jessica spent the greater part of the day in the bedroom, moving back and forth, her phone constantly attached to her ear. She believed shutting the door would grant her privacy, but our walls weren't that soundproof. I could make out her distress in her voice, her hushed whispers as she tried to repair whatever damage was done. "What do you mean he knows? Who told him?" "Hold on. I don't care if your boss is displeased. Rectify it. This wasn't supposed to leak." I chuckled. Ah, the powerful were crumbling under pressure. By nightfall, Jessica stepped out, her gaze sharp, her posture rigid. She was preparing for a confrontation, but I had no plans of retreating. She stood in the lounge, readying herself for a battle, but I refused to back down. Clutching her phone tightly, she asked accusingly, "What have you done?" Glancing up from my emails, I responded casually, "Whatever needed to be done." Mark wanted to play a dangerous game, so I escalated the situation. Her face hardened, but also showed a hint of terror. "You had no right," she snapped. "This was our secret. You've involved an outsider." Standing up slowly, I placed my hands on the table edge. "You brought him into it when you chose to be unfaithful, Jessica. Stop pretending to be an innocent bystander. This mess is yours. Now you must face the consequences." She moved closer, her voice barely audible and venomous. "Do you understand the damage you've caused?" Mark could lose his job. I nonchalantly arched an eyebrow, letting her words hang heavy in the room. "I hope so. Perhaps he'll learn to respect another man's marriage." The tension between us was palpable. Jessica's countenance contorted as her feelings wrestled for supremacy. It was a mix of rage, embarrassment, and panic. Eventually, she looked away, running her fingers through her hair. "You're vindictive," she murmured. I casually shrugged. "And you're a liar. Seems like we're both learning some truths about each other." The atmosphere thickened with tension when her phone vibrated once more. Initially, she dismissed it, but the second buzz was too much to resist. She peeked at the screen and stood still. Her response gave me the confirmation I required. "Go on," I gestured towards the phone. "Answer it. Or are you afraid of what he'll say?" She hesitated before eventually pressing the green button and placing the phone against her ear. "What?" she growled, her voice hushed. I stood steadfast, scrutinizing her actions. "No, I don't know how he found out," she murmured into the phone, pacing back and forth. "I'm taking care of it. Just stop contacting me for a while." She hung up suddenly and faced me, her calmness crumbling apart. "Do you find this amusing?" she bellowed. "You believe that destroying someone else's happiness elevates you?" I responded sarcastically with a hollow laugh. "Let's discuss destruction, shall we? You obliterated ours the moment you decided I wasn't worthy. Don't stand there and chide me for tidying up the chaos you created." Jessica waved her hands in frustration. "What do you want from me?" she snapped. "An apology. Fine, I apologize. I apologize for getting caught. I apologize for finding more exciting prospects than you. Are you content now?" Her words struck me like a blow, but I remained expressionless. Instead, I offered a chilly smile. "Thank you," I said succinctly. She scowled. "For what?" she asked. "For confirming your true nature," I retorted, striding away. "Now I don't have to feel remorseful for the outcome that follows." Jessica followed me with a call, but I kept moving. My thoughts were drifting beyond Jessica and Mark. This wasn't simply about them anymore. I aimed to emerge from this disorder more resilient, allowing them to handle the destruction they wrought. And I was merely warming up. Jessica was fraying at a faster pace than anticipated. Her composed exterior had vanished, replaced with anxious vigor and incessant phone chatter. Each time I walked into the room, she'd tense up, her voice growing softer, as if attempting to safeguard her secrets. She hadn't grasped that I was already a few moves ahead. By midweek, signs of Mark's life deteriorating were apparent. A brief review of his LinkedIn profile indicated he was on leave from work. Casual inquiries via mutual acquaintances painted an even bleaker picture. Mark had been summoned to an HR meeting following the forwarding of compromising personal conduct evidence to his superior. He exited that meeting noticeably shaken, and whispers about an inappropriate relationship with a married client, Jessica, were already circulating. Unsurprisingly, Jessica remained silent on the matter. She maintained her customary deception, as if believing silence could erase the turmoil I had stirred up. However, I sought more than whispers and uneasy HR encounters. I yearned for resolution. That night, while Jessica was out walking to calm her mind, I delved further into her second phone. Hidden in her messages with Mark was precisely what I desired. A meeting. They'd set a farewell appointment, though their conversations suggested they didn't truly believe it would be their last. The date, time, and location were all specified, the rendezvous taking place Friday night at 8 p.m. at a small downtown cafe. Ideal. I spent the subsequent day preparing, ensuring every aspect of my scheme was in order. When Friday arrived, Jessica appeared anxious but resolute. She avoided looking at me all afternoon, which only affirmed she was adhering to her plan. By 6:30, she announced she was leaving. "Business dinner," she claimed, donning a pair of heels and gathering her belongings. Her conversational manner implied an overzealous effort to seem non-suspicious. I remained silent, merely nodding as she exited, leaving behind only the echo of her departure. As soon as her vehicle vanished from sight, I retrieved my keys and pursued her. I didn't head straight for the cafe. Instead, I parked a block away and waited, observing Jessica approach and enter. Mark was already there, his posture revealing unease. Jessica beamed upon seeing him, an expression I hadn't witnessed in months. The sight left me feeling pained, as she displayed affection towards him that once belonged to me. Regrettably, the feelings welled up, but I suppressed them, unwilling to waver from my objective. Remaining hidden within my vehicle, I captured their intimate gathering on camera, keeping a distance. Their display of affection was far from clandestine. Jessica drew closer, touching his arm, and her body language spoke volumes of openness and invitation. Mark seemed jittery, casting furtive glances around as though anticipating an unwelcome intrusion. Not me, however. I chose to let them believe they had escaped. I bided my time until Jessica departed, watched her depart, and trailed Mark to his next location home. Situated a few homes away from his modest suburban lease, I noted the lights flickering on as he entered. Then I took action. Mark opened the door looking haggard and weary, but his countenance morphed into sheer terror upon seeing me. "We need to discuss," I stated, advancing before he could slam the door shut. He hesitated, trying to gather himself. "I don't know what you presume." "Spare it," I growled. "I don't give a damn about your justifications. This isn't a dialogue. It's a warning." His eyes widened in bewilderment and evident fear. "Have you already lost your employment?" I persisted, maintaining a low, controlled tone. "But if you assume that resolves this matter, you are gravely mistaken. Keep clear from my wife. Have you understood?" Mark put up his hands in a protective gesture. "I listen, man. I didn't intend for this to," I said, repeating firmly, "Have you understood?" My voice was cold. He nodded hastily, looking pale. "Yes, I've heard." I faced him for a while longer, allowing my words to penetrate. Then I turned and departed, leaving him standing there, shattered remnants of the man who believed he could seize my life. Upon returning home, Jessica was already asleep or feigning it. Good. Let her lie in bed, imagining she'd pulled off another trick. Tomorrow, she'd awaken to the next stage of my plan, and she wouldn't see it coming. The day following Jessica's secret meeting, I awoke earlier than normal. The sun had scarcely risen, but my thoughts were already spinning with what was to transpire next. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about resolution, about exposing every lie Jessica had constructed in the glaring light of day. She was yet to wake when I initiated Phase 2. My initial destination was her wardrobe, where her designer bags and neatly folded scarves were artfully displayed. Hidden inside one of her preferred totes was the receipt I'd concealed from the previous night, a printed copy of her cafe bill bearing Mark's signature. I left it on the kitchen counter, precisely where she'd notice it upon fetching her morning coffee. The trap was prepared. Jessica appeared around 9:15, donning an oversized sweater and her habitual sleepy demeanor. She scarcely looked at me as she poured herself a cup of coffee, until her gaze fell on the receipt. She halted. "What's this?" she inquired, maintaining a composed tone, though I detected the tension lurking beneath it. I feigned nonchalance, leafing through a newspaper as if devoid of worry. "Seems like something you left in your bag." Her hand trembled slightly as she picked up the receipt, her eyes scanning the text. When she saw the name, her face paled. "Why are you rummaging through my belongings?" she asked sternly, her voice escalating. "Merely searching for evidence of the dinner you spoke of last night," I replied, keeping a casual tone. "Seems I found it." Jessica slammed the receipt onto the counter. "Unforgivable. Now you're snooping through my things, peering like a suspicious lover." "Stop," I retorted sharply, interrupting her. "Enough with your attempts to deflect blame. You lied to me again, Jess, and this time you didn't even try to hide it." Her jaw clenched, but she remained silent on the matter. For the first time, she appeared truly cornered. "What do you want from me?" she asked angrily, her voice breaking slightly. "An apology. Very well. I apologize. I'm sorry for my mistake. I'm sorry for causing you pain, but you've made your point. Can we move forward now?" I chuckled bitterly. "Move on. You believe this is something that can be easily forgotten. Have you any grasp of what your actions have led to? Or are you entrenched in self-deception so profoundly that you fail to perceive the destruction wrought?" Her gaze darted around the room, seeking solace or escape. She found neither, ultimately collapsing into a chair opposite me, her shoulders drooping. "I hadn't intended for things to escalate this much," she murmured. "However, they did," I responded. "And now we find ourselves in this predicament. So, what is your plan of action?" She lifted her gaze towards me, tears glistening in her eyes. For a moment, I thought I detected regret, but her next words shattered any hope I harbored. "I'm unsure," she confessed. "I'm uncertain if I can rectify this situation. I'm even doubtful if I want to." Her utterance echoed heavily, piercing my heart. "Uncertain if you wish to," I repeated softly. She nodded, a solitary tear tracing its path down her cheek. "None of this was part of my plan, but I've been unhappy for a prolonged period, and I believe you have too." As her confession hung heavy in the air, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was a rejection of me, us, our shared past. With an unhurried movement, I rose from my seat. "I appreciate your clarification," I said, my voice frosty. "It simplifies what I'm about to do considerably." Jessica looked bewildered, her puzzlement evident. "What are you referring to?" I remained silent, instead donning my coat and exiting through the door, leaving her behind, gripping the receipt as if it were the last remnant of a life she had already torn apart. I was uncertain about my destination, but there was one certainty: the mirror had splintered, leaving no possibility for mending. All that remained now was to gather the sharpest fragments and sever the lingering bond connecting me to her. So I drove aimlessly for a while. The engine's roar and tires on the asphalt were my only links to reality. Those words looped in my mind continually. "I'm uncertain if I should repair this." It wasn't simply the betrayal now, it was the conclusion of it. She had decided, and for the first time, I understood. I wasn't enraged. I was liberated. As I parked in a modest park, the sun was at its zenith. I settled on a weathered bench, my phone in hand, staring at the display. The proof I gathered was laid out there, meticulously organized within a folder. Screen grabs of messages, images of Jessica and Mark together, and of course, the bill from their cafe date. I perused it all one last time, a fraction of me contemplating erasing everything and leaving. But then I recalled the deceit, the disregard, the arrogance she had shown repeatedly. No, she wasn't allowed to depart unscathed. I launched the messaging app and drafted a group message. "To Jessica, Mark, Jessica's family, and our dear friend, I believe honesty is essential. It seems it's time for disclosure. Jessica, this message concerns your communications with Mark, your secret meetings, your deceptions. You have betrayed me and our marriage, and I deserve more than the intricate web you've woven. This serves as my official farewell." Attaching all evidence, I sent it off. The delivery confirmation flashed, and just like that, it was beyond my control. As I waited for the consequences to unfold, my phone started buzzing almost instantly. First came Jessica. "Jessica, is this a joke? What's going on with you? You're ruining my life." I remained silent. Then her sister, Laura. "Laura, is this true? Oh my God, I can't believe this. Jess said she was happy. What transpired?" Again, I chose not to respond. It's for Jessica to clarify the situation. Lastly, a message from Mark. "Mark, why are you causing trouble, man? Why are you involving everyone in this?" He received a reply from me. "Me? The problem? The real question is, what's your reason for doing this? My issue was believing you thought you could betray my wife without repercussions. Here are the consequences, Mark. Following our confrontation, I blocked you. Swiftly, the impact echoed throughout. Upon returning home, Jessica sat on the sofa, her face marked with tears and her grip tight around her phone. Her eyes flashed venom at me. "You've ruined everything," she accused, her voice raw. "Do you comprehend what you've done?" I placed my keys on the counter and turned to address her. "Ruined everything," I echoed calmly. "It wasn't me who wrecked things. You wrecked them when you chose someone else over me. I merely made it clear to everyone." Jessica, shaking, rose from the sofa with labored breaths. "I despise you," she snarled, each word filled with venom. I gave a bitter chuckle. "Good. Makes this easier." I moved past her and into our room, where I retrieved the suitcase I'd packed that morning. I required little more than necessities. Jessica made no protest as I exited, pulling the suitcase along. At the door, I momentarily paused, casting a backward glance. "You're correct, Jessica," I softly yet firmly declared. Although I wasn't joyful, I possessed the integrity to remain faithful. This comment visibly saddened her, but I didn't wait for a reply. I departed, closing the door behind me. For the first time in months, possibly years, I felt unburdened. The connection that bound me to her was severed. The deceit, treachery, and resentment were finally cut off. I wasn't aware of what was to follow, but I knew one truth. It would be under my control, and without her, I took cautious steps initially. I booked a modest hotel room on the town's outskirts, merely enough space for contemplation devoid of Jessica's specter. The initial night, I didn't rest. My thoughts swirled with what I had done, with what lay ahead. By dawn, my phone was vibrating. Jessica repeatedly texted me, with some messages laced with anger, venom, and accusations. Messages like, "Jessica, you've tarnished my reputation. Jessica, people are labeling me a cheater due to you. You're pathetic. Others tried to manipulate me, begging for me to retract everything. Jessica, this didn't have to happen. We could have resolved things. Please talk to me. Let's find a solution." I chose to disregard all of them. What caught me off guard was the response from those around us, friends, family, even casual acquaintances reaching out with their thoughts. Jessica's mom contacted me first, her voice shaking as she tried to make sense of it. "Is this true?" she asked hopefully. "Yes, every word," I responded. She sighed heavily. "I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, but..." She remains my daughter. I didn't hold it against her. Family loyalty runs deep, even when the truth is unpleasant. My best friend, Mike, was next. His reaction combined disbelief and anger. Upon hearing the entire tale, he declared he had never liked her. He added that he hadn't wanted to speak up, but found her behavior suspect all along. "You deserved better, buddy." Whether it made me feel better or worse, the unexpected message arrived from Laura, Jessica's sister. "Laura, I apologize for your pain. If it helps, Jess has been like this her entire life, always convinced she could get away with anything. I'm glad someone finally confronted her. I didn't respond to her, but her words stayed with me. They made me understand that this wasn't just about betrayal. It was about who Jessica truly is. By the second day, Jessica stopped communicating, but the damage had already been inflicted. It reached Mark's workplace that his leave would be prolonged indefinitely. Friends, once close to Jessica, began avoiding her due to their embarrassment over her actions. The final blow came when I filed for divorce. After much contemplation, even after all that transpired, it wasn't an easy choice to make. 7 years of marriage couldn't be undone, but each move Jessica made with Mark led us here, and there was no going back. I served the divorce papers to her that afternoon. This time she didn't reach out via call or text. Instead, a solitary email arrived in my inbox later that evening. I had received the documents. I can't find the words anymore. I hadn't intended for this to happen, but I know I can't rectify it. I hope you find someone who brings you joy someday. Jess, this was the first time she admitted any responsibility. However, it made no difference. I had accepted my course of action. As I sat in that small hotel room, gazing at the email, a realization struck me. Anger wasn't present anymore. Neither the blazing fury that fueled my revelation of her deceit, nor the desolate sorrow of betrayal. I felt liberated. Jessica's life was disintegrating, and Mark was sucked into the vortex with her. For the first time in a while, I wasn't drowning alongside them. A fresh, unblemished canvas lay before me devoid of deceit, doubt, and her. I was prepared to claim it. The day following the delivery of the divorce documents, I undertook an action I hadn't engaged in for years. I visited the gym. Not the casual visits Jessica would chide me about, but a genuine, sweat-inducing, heart-racing workout. For the first time in what seemed like ages, the burden on my shoulders wasn't merely emotional. Each lift, each treadmill mile felt like peeling off layers of history. Jessica and Mark, the deceptions, the embarrassment. I abandoned it all piece by piece, one bead of sweat at a time. Later that night, I settled in my hotel room with a notepad and pen. I'm not typically a writer, but I needed to organize my thoughts. What should I do next? Where should I head from here? The life I'd constructed for over a decade had crumbled due to Jessica's decisions. But that also implied a clean slate, an opportunity to create something novel. My initial task was necessitated, finding a fresh residence. The house that Jessica and I once shared felt overrun by memories, contaminated by her deceit. I chose to renounce it entirely. The second endeavor was centered on personal growth. Over time, I'd invested an excessive amount of energy into sustaining our relationship, thereby losing sight of myself. Questions regarding my preferences and sources of joy both frightened and exhilarated me. To my surprise, the third goal proved surprisingly straightforward, immersing myself among caring individuals. True to form, I set about rekindling connections with old acquaintances over the ensuing weeks. These were folks I'd neglected due to Jessica's disapproval or because I was preoccupied with being an ideal spouse. I shared beverages with Mike, reconnected with some college companions, and even restored contact with my younger sibling, who had always recognized Jessica's facade. "Long overdue," she said upon hearing the truth. "You deserve more than her, and you have always had that option." Hearing those words now carries a different weight. Previously, I might have dismissed them as familial bias. However, I began to accept their truth. At the same time, Jessica continued to struggle with her life. The divorce papers caused disarray in her world. Her friends stopped responding to her calls, her family drew away, and even Mark ceased communication. One evening, she sent me a solitary message: "Jessica, I miss us." I contemplated that text for a while. The words were both recognizable and vacant. This was the Jessica I had fallen for, the one who could say the right things, even when they weren't sincere. But I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't miss her because I wasn't certain we were more than a figment of my imagination. Instead, I concentrated on myself. I immersed myself in work and discovered new hobbies: boxing, cooking, even some photography. Each stride seemed like reclaiming a portion of myself long hidden away. The most significant change occurred upon discovering a new dwelling, a compact yet comfortable apartment across town. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine, free from shared pasts and the specters of deceit. I adorned my walls with the first photograph I ever took: a sunset skyline, its colors alive with promise and hope. It served as a testament that even after the darkest tempests, there's always light on the horizon yet to come. The life I once knew faded away. For the first time in ages, I accepted this change. I was no longer fleeing. I had escaped Jessica's disputes and Mark's looming presence. I was liberated, finally prepared to advance. Days turned into months, and at first, it felt alien, almost dreamlike, to reside in a world without Jessica. No more contentious dinner discussions, no silent conflicts over her secretive late hours, no startling midnight discoveries of her clandestine texting. I was free and ready to embrace the future. The silence was initially unnerving, but ultimately soothing. The divorce was swiftly concluded, sooner than anticipated. Jessica didn't contest it. In truth, she was scarcely present, both physically and metaphorically. Her attorney handled most of her responses, and in the end, the house, her ring, and our shared memories became hers to keep. I retained what mattered most: my self-respect, my liberty, and the understanding that I'd never again tolerate someone who regarded me as insignificant. The final documents arrived via post on a drizzly Thursday afternoon. I recall gripping the envelope, my gaze fixed on the bold inscription, "Final Decree of Divorce." It should have symbolized an end, but instead, it signaled a new start. I tossed the envelope onto the counter and fetched my keys. That evening, I drove to a nearby lake I frequented as a teenager. By the time I arrived, the rain had ceased, leaving the atmosphere refreshingly crisp and clear. On the bonnet of my car, I gazed at the horizon, permitting dreams about the future to surface for the first time in years, not the future I had envisaged with Jessica, but a superior, authentic one. The pain of betrayal softened into a far-off twinge. Periodically, I'd receive updates from shared acquaintances regarding Jessica's struggles to rebuild her life. Her standing was ruined, her close friendships faded, and her romance with Mark collapsed swiftly post-revelation. A part of me yearned for schadenfreude, but all I felt was compassion. Jessica had chosen her path, and she bore its consequences. In contrast, I flourished. My career surged beyond expectations. Free from emotional burdens, I dedicated myself to work, climbing the corporate ladder with a promotion and financial stability sufficient for ambitious endeavors. I embarked on travels to destinations I had long wished for, but not made time for, and during this journey, I encountered someone named Claire. We crossed paths at a photography workshop, both of us struggling with our cameras during a sunset session. She giggled at my awful humor, while I found myself beaming more in that single afternoon than I had in the preceding 7 years. Claire was unique. She didn't play games, didn't make excuses, and above all, made me feel valued. We were taking things cautiously at the time, but for the first time in a while, I felt something I believed I'd lost forever hope. In retrospect, I have no regrets. Not about my marriage, not about the heartache, not even about the tumultuous public dissolution of it all. These experiences imparted lessons I would never have gleaned otherwise. I learned to trust myself, to assert myself, and to refuse to accept anything less than what I deserved. To anyone experiencing something comparable, my counsel: do not let another's deceit dictate your identity. Avoid prolonged exposure in circumstances that devalue, disrespect, or neglected you. You are worth more than such treatment, though it may take time to accept this truth. Remember, even when all seems bleak currently, there is always an escape route. Sometimes, this exit leads to something superior than you could previously conceive. For me, that's what this path transformed into: a challenging, chaotic, but eventually liberating course towards a fresh life. And I have no intention of revisiting the past.